Hello, my name is Dr. Eric Landrum from the Department of Psychology at Boise State University. This is a brief screencast about thoughts about graduate school and psychology. It's really a kind of a brief overview of the types of decisions to be made about going to graduate school, a little bit about its popularity and competitiveness, and then finally finishing up with thoughts about the application process to graduate school itself. So just to provide a little bit of framing and background about, kind of the state of where we are with regards to graduate school in psychology. In the last year that we have the data available, there's over 114,000 individuals receiving their bachelor's degree in psychology in the United States. According to statistics provided by the American Psychological Association, about 4% of those folks who graduate each year pursue doctoral training, that's either a PsyD or a PhD, and about 21 to 22% roughly go on for a master's degree in psychology. Now, I think it's important to note here that these are just the psychology graduates who go on to graduate study in psychology. Graduates oftentimes go on to graduate study in medical school or law school, dental school, vet school, and so we're really talking about 1/4 of all the psychology graduates going on for more psychology graduate education. And really this screencast is about what can you be doing to achieve your goals and what types of things should you be aware of. And honestly, the theme for me is about truth in advertising. It's very competitive, it's very popular. I just want you to know all the details about it so that you can deeply reflect about this and make an informed decision. So here we go. This is a nice little trend graph from starting from 1950 forward. You see the last year the data are available. Females are in red, males are in gray. It's a boom business. You see a highly positive slope there with regards to the popularity of psychology. It doesn't look like it's going to go down in the near future. At least that's what the trend looks like. And so each year, just to kind of keep it in mind, there's going to be more and more students interested more and more in graduate study in psychology. So you should know that for your future planning. So here's a nice little overview of today's screencast. It's going to be about some thoughts about making the decision whether to go to graduate school or not, a little bit about popularity and competitiveness, and then finally ending up with applying to graduate school in psychology. So making the decision. To be honest with you, you need to really enjoy school because at the end of your bachelor's degree, you're going to be thinking about 4, 6, maybe 8 more years of education, depending on what you're interested in your area. And so here's a nice little paragraph, and I'm not going to read this to you. You can always pause the video and read it yourself. But you should enjoy school if you want to go on for more school. If you're at the end of your senior year and you're absolutely dreading everything that you're doing, maybe taking a year off or a gap year or a break year or two wouldn't be a bad idea. And so really think about, is graduate training for me? Do I want to continue doing this? There's lots of benefits, but there's cost as well in terms of financial cost, resource cost, and time as well. And so it's an important decision. What I like about this listing is that it actually shows you some of the jobs that you can do that you need training beyond a bachelor's degree, but it also has a mix of things that only a psychology graduate program could prepare you for, or other jobs where other additional training outside of psychology could prepare you for. So, for example, some of these are very specific. So, a child psychologist, or a cognitive psychologist, or a sports psychologist, those folks are chiefly going to graduate schools in psychology. But to become a lawyer, to become a guidance counselor, to become an optometrist or a pediatrician, those are other routes that'll require more education beyond the bachelor's degree, but not necessarily psychological training. Certainly, the undergrad's good preparation for those, but for example, pediatrician means you're going to medical school, and so and a good number of our psychology graduates do go on to medical school, law school, places like that. So I think it's a good list to kind of reflect on what the options are if you do decide to continue your education. I like this graphic because the basic story here is that generally speaking, the more education you attain, the greater your lifetime earnings will be. So the middle column is an estimate of average annual earnings, and then the last column there is about median lifetime earnings. And you can see as you start from the bottom, less than ninth grade, up to professional doctoral degrees, generally speaking, the more education you have, the greater your earning potential. Now remember, this is collapsed across all types of majors and parts of the country. Your results will surely vary, and so there's good reasons beyond just the achievement, the accomplishment to go on to graduate school. There are financial benefits as well in terms of earnings potential. I think it's good to show you the real data as best I can. I think this is the most recent data out of, it came out of a 2009 doctoral survey of psychologists. It was published in 2011. And so you can see for different types of not necessarily professors, but settings as well as positions within corporations. You can see the median starting salary and the standard deviation. And so, whether you're working in a VA medical center or you're an assistant professor or an applied psychologist, you can kind of get a sense of, the average, the mean starting salary for folks with a doctorate, either a PsyD or a PhD. Where do those folks work? I think this is sometimes interesting to people because you got to think about the settings for which you might work. And so you can see a great deal of those folks are working in business and government. It could be universities, counseling centers, clinics, VA medical centers. Those are the bulk, the top four there on the list. And so you can kind of get a sense of where doctoral recipients work once they have their PhD or their PsyD. And here also is the data for master's degree folks. This is a little bit older data. It gets updated by APA every now and again. And so this is really quite dated, but at least to give you kind of a sense of comparison. Direct human service settings could be doing research, it could be teaching as a faculty member, and so again, you can see mean starting salaries for master's folks as well as the standard deviations. Again, it's all about truth in advertising and knowing kind of what you're getting into and where you're going. I really like this listing because it gives two different perspectives about questions and reflections that you need to have about, is graduate school right for me? And so, again, you can come back to this screen, you can freeze it, you can write these down, you can kind of answer them out loud to yourself. But I think it's a big decision. Sometimes students make it on autopilot and they regret that autopilot. It should be thoughtful and meaningful to you. And so, again, I'd freeze this screen, come back to it, and really think about answering these questions honestly with yourself. And it'll help you make the decision, I hope, about whether or not you should apply to graduate school. So, just I want to give you a little bit about popularity and competitiveness with graduate programs in psychology. So here's some fairly recent data about doctoral programs and master's programs in the United States. And so you can see a couple things right away. There are more applicants to doctoral programs than masters. There are more programs per se for doctoral than masters. You can see it's fairly competitive. And so U.S. doctoral programs for the data from 2009, 2010, 89,000 plus applications, 22.7% are accepted. There's less, master's programs are less popular with 10,000 applications, but they're a little bit less competitive as well, 48.3%. Now, just as a note, and I'm not really quite sure this means anything, but the typical US average for acceptance into medical school is right around 50%. And so U.S. doctoral programs in psychology are much more difficult to get into than medical school. And master's programs are right around the same rate of difficulty of getting into medical school, if that helps you have some perspective. So it's very competitive, and some programs are popular than others. So here's kind of a graphic that kind of give you a start to the sense of this. So you can see there's two big columns, the PhD programs and the PsyD programs. And I'm really not going to go into that distinction in this screencast, but I encourage you to dig into that with a Google search or looking into PsycInfo or whatever. So you can see the number of applicants and applications accepted. You can see that PsyD programs are a little bit less competitive than the PhD programs. There's fewer applicants to PsyD programs than there are PhD programs. Clinical school and counseling psychology programs are the only ones that are accredited by the American Psychological Association. So that's why they deserve this kind of special attention in this graphic. All right. So again, yeah, I just want you. That's the truth in advertising. I'm not trying to steer you away from applying to graduate school, but you ought to know that it's very competitive and it's very popular. Now, this listing is a little bit too small to see, so I'm going to blow it up on the next two slides. But I kind of want to give you the big picture. This is really what most people get interested in when they really start seriously considering the specialty area they're going into in graduate training. So, for example, as an undergraduate, you're kind of a generalist. You're taking a bunch of classes, you're getting a broad exposure. In graduate school, you take a deeper dive. And so you specialize in health psychology or social psychology or cognitive psychology. In fact, a lot of the core courses that you've been taking will be specialty areas within the domain of psychology. So you can see that there's a column about doctoral programs and master's programs. And so let me just give you the top half of that list so you can see it a little bit better. And so you can see clinical psychology, the numbers actually differ from the slide I showed you a couple slides ago. That's because that slide was about accredited programs. There are also clinical PhD programs that are not accredited. So I think the acceptance rate for the accredited programs for clinical was 7.3%, and here you see it's 17.2% if you put everybody together. So again, you can see what's popular. Clinical is popular on this top half. Counseling is very popular. School psych is popular. General psychology, experimental psych is pretty popular. Master's programs, you can see the same thing. And so you can look at applications, the number of acceptances, and especially the percentage, I think is really valuable to look at, as well as then how many students actually enroll. So that'll tell you the number of slots, generally speaking, in the country that are available for folks in those specialty areas. So again, that's just the top half of the list. Here's the bottom half of that list. And so developmental is very popular. Social, IO, industrial, organizational, cognitive psych is pretty popular by looking at applications. You can see the acceptance rates are, gosh, on this page pretty low for many of these, although not for everything. You can see that some programs have very few applications. Some master's programs don't have certain specialties. Yeah, actually, some doctoral programs don't have some specialties. And so I just want you to see what's out there, competitiveness and popularity. That's really the point of this. Also, there's by Swaminathan in 2012, you can see there's research on what predicts success in graduate school. So once you get in, and that's going to be the focus of the final section of this screencast, but once you get in, what's going to predict success? And here's what they found: intellectual curiosity, intelligence, and conscientiousness. The GRE, which I'll mention briefly in the next section, the graduate record exam, is a pretty good predictor of graduate student GPA as well as the other variables that you see there. And so graduate schools, because there's limited slots, they're very interested in making sure the folks who get in have the best chance of succeeding. So they do research on this, and that research, by the way, informs their graduate admissions policies because they want to make the best bets they can on people because it's an investment on the part of the graduate program as well as the graduate student. So to wrap this up, and I just want to give a very brief, quick overview of the graduate school application process, and it's fairly intensive. I tell students the semester that they're applying to graduate schools, think of it at least as a 3 credit course. So if you register for 15 credits, it's going to feel like 18 if you're doing the graduate application process correctly. And so you can see there's a lot of steps here. I'm just going to briefly go over some of the steps in a slide or two here at the conclusion of this screencast. And so there's good research on this. And so if you want to predict your own graduate school admission, your GRE scores, your GPA, the letters of recommendation you have, the research experience you gained as an undergraduate, and your personal statement. And there are other things that a graduate admissions committee might be interested in, but the research shows us these are the top 5. And so if you are going to get the most bang for your buck and think about what should I be doing as an undergraduate, I'd be trying to maximize these 5 items in order to give yourselves the best chances of getting into graduate school. I don't want to dig into this too deeply, but I just wanted to show you there are subtle differences in what's rated highly important for doctoral programs versus master's degree programs. And so you can look at that list. You can freeze the screen and look at it. So letters of recommendation are important in both, but sometimes the order of the criteria that a graduate admissions committee uses changes depending on doctoral versus master's degree. Letters of recommendation are key, and in the remaining slides, if I've highlighted something in red, I think it's kind of an important tip to offer to you. And so most graduate admissions committees are going to require you to have 3 letters of recommendation. And when you go to a faculty member and ask for one, first off, do that in person. But secondly, ask them, would you be willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation? I'd much rather not write for a student than write a weak letter. I've written weak letters in my past, and I won't do those again. I'll just tell a student, I just don't think it's in my best interest. I think my weak letter might hurt you in your application process. And quite honestly, I have no interest in hurting a student's chances for their future. And most faculty members feel the exact same way. And so always ask for a strong letter of recommendation. By the way, a quick tip, if you don't know your three letter writers right now and you want to go to graduate school, you're not ready to graduate, even if the credits say that you are ready to graduate. That's my opinion, at least. Transcripts and GPA. So you're going to have your official transcript sent from the registrar's office to every one of the graduate schools that you apply to. I don't want to belabor this point, but every C grade hurts your academic future. And so, very likely, even a master's program or a doctoral program is going to have a minimum GPA cutoff of 3.00. And so that means that you want, well, you'd love to have all A's, but you only want A's and B's, and you'd prefer to have more A's than B's. But every C is dragging that GPA down and it's hurting your academic future. Kind of parallel to a resume, but a slightly different. A student applying to graduate school is going to want to have a CV, and that's short for curriculum vitae, which translates from the Latin literally as academic life. And so you've probably been told to have a resume relatively short, 1 to 2 pages. It's a synopsis. The goal of a CV, by the way, is to be as long as it possibly can be because you're describing literally your academic life. And so here's the place where you've been to conferences, you have poster presentations, you've been on the dean's list, you've been a teaching assistant or research assistant. These are the things that you'd want to address in your curriculum vitae. Also, be sure that you actually have a permanent email address and check with good student examples. Don't follow a faculty CV. So, for example, on my CV, I might have a grants and contracts section. It makes no sense for undergraduate students to copy that because they're not going to have anything. It's just going to be blank. And again, a CV is a great thing along with some of these other items to show to your advisor, to your mentor, and make sure that you're hitting the ball out of the park as best you can. For some graduate programs, depending on where you are in the process of applying, you might be asked for an interview. And this is going to be the same type of advice that we might give a job seeker for an interview. It's, you want to speak positively. You don't want to dish the dirt on anybody. What I really encourage you to do is what's in red here on this screen, which is send a thank you note if you have an interview to the graduate program, literally a physical note, ink, paper, pencil, envelope, stamp. Send a thank you note through the mail. You've been told enough about social networking before. Make sure that your presence there is appropriate. Graduate admissions committees, before they give scholarships, will sometimes do a Facebook search, a Twitter search. And so make sure that what's seen publicly is going to be appropriate for a professional endeavor. And then just obviously be sure to understand your privacy settings on those pieces of social media. Also, the volleyball serve analogy quickly, which means when you go to an interview, you want to be confident but not cocky. You want to hit the ball hard enough to get it over the volleyball net, but not so far that you hit it out of bounds. And so you don't want to be meek and mild. You're going to brag about yourself. That might feel uncomfortable, but brag about yourself in a way that is socially acceptable and not obnoxious. And again, I think the best way to figure that out is with an advisor, a faculty mentor, doing a mock interview, practicing those interviews before you actually get into the interview situation. The GRE I describe to students is really kind of like the SAT on steroids. And so you might have taken the SAT or ACT prior to getting into college. The GRE is going to be awaiting for you if you want to go into graduate school in psychology. And you should note, by the way, that not every doctoral program and not every master's program in psychology requires the GRE. Some do or some don't. So you're going to want to do your homework. And here in a minute, I'm actually going to give you some tips on how to do that homework to figure out what programs do and don't require it. Also, I think that second note is really critical. A high GRE score will help offset a low GPA, but the reverse is not true. If you have a 4.0 GPA and low GRE scores, a graduate admissions committee is going to scratch their head and go, huh? What's going on there? The thing about the GRE, and I won't belabor this, but it's the great equalizer. So this is this nationally standardized norm test that's given across the country. And so graduate admissions committees have at least one indicator that's standardized. And so they can make direct comparisons. It's hard to compare GPAs from different institutions or even letters of recommendation from different faculty members. Those are difficult comparisons, but the GRE is really the one great equalizer. And I encourage you, if your program requires that, to really put some time and effort into doing the best that you can on the graduate record exam. Here's a little example of what it's going to look like when you get to that spot, when you're ready for that, and you're going to have GRE scores sent directly from ETS to all the graduate programs that you're applying to. You're probably going to be asked for a personal statement. It's called sometimes an autobiographical statement, letter of intent, statement of purpose. Different schools have very specific instructions for theirs. And so this is not a write an essay once and then copy and paste. Be sure that you're answering exactly what the school is looking for. I tell students if you can't follow the instructions to apply to graduate school, odds are you're not going to get into graduate school. So here are just a couple of quick examples of four different universities, and these are real instructions they have provided to write a personal statement. If you actually stop and read these, you'll realize that you can't write one thing and it's going to equally apply well to all four of those statements. And so this is the place where you do your homework and you customize every application to every school that you're interested in. And again, that's why it's going to feel like 3 credits the semester you're applying to grad schools, because you're really doing a lot of customized work to make sure you give the graduate school what they're looking for. This is the resource I alluded to just a minute ago. And so, American Psychological Association publishes this every year. You can see the cover for the 2015 edition. There'll be a 2016, 2017. I just grabbed a sample page out of that, and you can see UW in Seattle, and I've got some annotations there. And so you can freeze this and look at it at your leisure. But it'll tell you the number of people who've applied. If you keep going, this is just page one of that volume of on that school. If you keep going, it'll tell you the GRE cutoffs, the minimum, the median score of those who are accepted, and so it's really practical advice. You could find this on the internet, but this book is great because it has every graduate program in a department of psychology in the United States and Canada, and there's an amazing index in the back that'll tell you about you want to go into clinical PhD, and it'll give you a listing of all the clinical PhD programs that are listed in that book, and so it's kind of a one-stop shop. I mean, you could find almost all of this on the internet, but it's going to take you a long time. And so this is really a time saver for a lot of busy junior and senior level psych majors. Anyway, that's really it. I wanted to give you a quick overview about thinking about graduate school, the decision you've got to make, the popularity, the competitiveness, as well as the application process. And as I say, good luck at the end of the screencast. Make sure that you use the resources, not only the book resources and the websites I pointed out to you, but also things like your faculty members in your classes, because they've all gone to graduate school. The mentors, the advisors, organizations like Psychi and Psych Club oftentimes have speakers that talk about graduate school issues, or workshops on campus to work on a personal statement or a CV or a resume. So leverage the resources that you have available and really take some time to think deeply about this decision. It's a big professional decision for anyone considering graduate school in psychology. And of course, good luck.